Support for Carolina Business Review provided by Grant Thornton. Operating in more than 100 countries, our tax, audit, and advisory professionals specialize in helping companies unlock their growth potential. Blue Cross and Blue Shield of South Carolina, where healthcare is changing for the better. Find out how at ahealthysc.tv. And by Sunoco, a global manufacturer of consumer and industrial packaging products and provider of packaging services, with more than 300 operations in 35 countries.
With legislative sessions in South Carolina started and in North Carolina in pre-flight check, education is once more on the short priority list. Welcome back, and thank you for supporting for the last 25 years the most widely watched source of Carolina business and public policy. I am Chris William, and following President Obama's authorization of the Every Student Succeeds Act in December, how do we even begin to unpack such a broad and seismic shift in U.S. education policy? And what is the trickle-down effect in North and South Carolina? That will be our first question for the panel of guests, and later on, Columbia College President Beth Dinndorf.
Major funding also by Novant Health, bringing you world-class technology, clinicians, and care when and where you need it. The Duke Endowment, a private foundation enriching communities in the Carolinas through higher education, healthcare, rural churches, and children's services. And by Blue Cross and Blue Shield of North Carolina. Who's responsible for rising healthcare costs? Join us and many others in a candid discussion at letstalkcost.com. On this edition of Carolina Business Review, Walker Sanders, President of the Community Foundation of Greater Greensboro, Bernadette Hampton, President of the South Carolina Education Association, and special guest Beth Dinndorf, President of Columbia College. Here's Chris William.
Hello, welcome to our program. Walker, Bernadette, good to have you both here. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Pleasure to be here.
So, in December of last year, President Obama signed some very, I think it's an understatement to say it was very broad, sweeping legislation to retool education policy. The question, Walker, and you are involved in school reform in Guilford County and certainly the community in the Triad. How do we begin to figure out how this is really going to impact North Carolina and South Carolina? How do we do that?
We've actually been looking at for much more of a community approach, and our focus in Guilford County has been 100% on how do we get children to have a degree. And education really needs to be thought of much more as a workforce development initiative. And so as we break that down locally in Guilford County, we are putting in place efforts to bring the city government involved in it, which historically has not been involved in public education, and focus on what the volunteer and community can do in engaging a discussion around how we're going to move forward in education. But most importantly, how do we get children so they have degrees? And, we feel like we get so caught up in high school graduation rates, or we get so caught up in reading by grade level by grade 3 or math proficiency by 8th grade. The real focus, we believe, needs to be on how many children are actually getting a degree, and are they ready and prepared for the 21st century workforce.
Oh, and let me be clear, you're saying a high school degree, not a college degree?
No, we're focused on a college degree, whether it's a 2-year or a 4-year, that if you read the statistics, that more than 65% of all jobs in America in the year 2020 will require some sort of a degree, whether that's a 4-year degree or a 2-year associate's degree. We believe our focus needs to be on getting children those degrees so that they're prepared for the 21st century workforce.
So, Bernadette, I want to come back to this idea that Walker just brought up about the output of the kids coming out of school. But before we do that, the Every Child Succeeds Act, this is very broad legislation.
Yes, sir.
Any idea in the Palmetto State, how this is going to play out?
It's very broad, but it gives the school districts the flexibility to develop a plan that's structured to their needs and meeting the needs of their students, because every district have different needs. And then also it gives the states an opportunity to have more input on the assessments, the standards, and accountability as a state, and not necessarily coming from the federal level.
In your mind, Bernadette, does it make it easier? Is it about the same, or is this more compliance from the state educator's standpoint?
It should make it easier because, again, it's structured more so from the state needs as well as from the district needs. And then also teachers have more input into the legislation as the district level as well as at the state level. I'm currently serving on the state accountability committee, as well as encouraging our locals to participate at the local level and giving suggestions into the district plans as well. And we are training teachers and members on what the ESEA means for them as teachers and how they can be a part of the implementation at the local level as well as at the state level.
Does this change the dialogue at all? And I mean the new Every Student Succeeds Act. Does this change the calculus or the dialogue around teacher pay for either state? Do you see it in North Carolina?
We haven't had the discussion.
Yeah. What do you think, Bernadette?
I think it does, because now it's going to require us to look at the shortage of that we have, because I know in South Carolina we have the Center of Education Recruitment, Retention and Advancement, and their statistics tell us that we are graduating 2,000 teachers every year from within South Carolina, but we have a need of 4,000. So in looking at the shortages that we have and looking at one of the reasons that contribute to the shortage is compensation, because we have a number of teachers working 2 and 3 jobs in order to make ends meet, which takes away from their focus on classroom preparation. So I think in looking at meeting the needs of, or the accountability to the Every Student Succeed Act, yes, we're going to have to look at compensation, because we do have a shortage a shortage of teachers.
And that's assuming, by the way, that those 2,000 will stay in state and don't take jobs at higher paying districts.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think there's also an important aspect you need to consider in terms of we're asking teachers to do so much more than just teach the curriculum. And there's a role that communities have in terms of trying to figure out how can you add more resources to the schools that perhaps aren't part of what the teachers are asked to do every single day. We have teachers that are being asked to be social workers, school nurses, guidance counselors, and still teach the classes. And when you look at various statistics about why teachers have left the profession, many of them will say it's less about the income as much as it is about the workload that they're being asked to do, and the 80-hour weeks that they're constantly being asked to put in. It's impossible to expect all of our teachers to be all those things that the children need to be successful. We spend a lot of money in this country on early childhood education, which is extremely important, and we want every child ready to learn when they get to kindergarten. But then when they get to kindergarten, we say good luck. There's not the wraparound services in the K-12 system to support the children, the families, and the teachers. We need to do something around what are those wraparound services that we can bring into the schools, whether it's the mental health services that could be brought into the schools, or our health systems can bring in nurses into the schools to provide that support that these teachers desperately need, and we certainly know that the families need it.
You know, Bernadette, I want to ask you this question. If we, and please weigh in on this, Walker, if we could take all the politics out of the debate around teacher pay, I know it's never going to happen, but if we could somehow boil it down to say, if South Carolina, if North Carolina could just bring teacher pay up to a competitive rate, not even adequate, but something a little bit better, something competitive, what kind of impact would that be on the state budget? How much bigger of a check would a state like South Carolina have to write to pay teachers to stay and to come?
Well, I know we've had this conversation this year with our State Superintendent of Education, Molly Spearman. She is one of her, during one conversation, it's been to look at a 1% increase, and that is to the tune of $85 million for a 1% increase across the board statewide for all teachers. But our association is advocating for a starting salary of $40,000 phased in over 5 years in order to bring us up to a comparable starting salary compared to other other professions that that graduate with a 4-year bachelor's degree. And I really appreciate everything that he said in reference to answering your last question, because we advocate for those same things that he just talked about. The need to have the wraparound services in order to address the needs of our students, because that minimizes the challenges of a classroom teacher when we have those resources there in order to address the needs of our students.
Yeah, we've got about 30 seconds left. Response on that at all?
Well, we have actually a superintendent that used to be in Guilford County that now is a superintendent of Houston City Schools, who literally comes to Guilford County and takes our teachers from Guilford County back to Houston. And he's coming in and picking our best teachers. We can't compete across the country if we don't do something to address the teacher pay and the support that they're getting.
Yeah, clearly there is a lot of pressure building on that. Guys, can you do it quickly?
I wanted to also add that we have an online petition, hashtag Pay South Carolina, hashtag Pay SC Teachers. And we have over 10,000 signatures thus far on trying to advocate for raising the teacher starting salary to $40,000 over a 5-year period.
Okay, good point. Thanks for getting that in there. Stay with us, please. We'll meet our guest in just a second. Coming up on this program next week, he is the Executive Vice President and the Chief Operating Officer of AFLAC. He lives in Columbia, South Carolina, where AFLAC, a big part of AFLAC, is based. Dan Liebisch will be on our program. And then in 2 weeks, Michelle Berry is the Chief Executive Officer of Durham-based Chimerix. A lot going on in pharmaceuticals and medical devices and that industry, and CEO of Chimerix will be on our program next week. Not surprising that one of the nation's oldest women's colleges is smack dab in the middle of the Palmetto State. That pedigree does not preclude them from many of the same issues that vex higher ed and their counterparts. Jumping in this discussion now is Columbia College President Beth Dinndorf. Beth, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Chris. Great to be with you.
Beth, we kind of talked on the edges. We talked about teacher pay. We talked about K through 12. But let's talk about workforce development for just a second. Many folks on this program, and not just this program, but in general, are complaining of a worker's skills gap, that they don't have the talent, that there's not an availability of inventory of the good workers that they need for their jobs. What do you say?
I say it's the responsibility of educators in higher education to prepare the workforce and to prepare our students at Columbia College, and we're a liberal arts institution. We prepare them for that first career they're going to have and the many careers that they're going to have throughout their lifetime, because they have to be adaptable today, because careers will be developed. New workforce areas will come into being within the Carolinas that they need to be able to jump into and succeed.
Is there a plan in place that Columbia College is not an island unto itself, but could work with public and other private schools about how we fill this worker skills gap, if it's your responsibility? How do you do that?
Well, we do partner with other institutions. Well, let me just say that at Columbia College, we placed 96% of our students last year in jobs or in graduate school. So we're delivering on our commitment to make sure that they are ready for the workforce and for economic independence. But we know that as a small institution, and regardless of the size of the institution, no one of us can do everything. It's incumbent that we partner. So we've partnered over the last several years with colleges throughout South Carolina thus far to provide the technology skills that all students need to be successful. It's a minor in applied computing, because no matter what field you're going into, it's a digital world and you need those skills.
Yeah. Walker, question?
I'd love to understand, one of the things we're so focused on is how we not just get children graduating from high school. We've done a great job in Guilford County. We have now 80% of our children graduating going from high school, which is wonderful. It's a great trend. We're one of the largest graduation rates of other urban areas in North Carolina and of the Southeast. However, less than 50% of those are going on to enroll in college. And then if we looked at the other statistics in a 6-year period, about 38% actually get degrees. What advice would you have for us of getting children, so not only do they just graduate from high school, but going on to college and higher education, to not just go there, but to actually finish to get that degree? Because you have such an impressive track record of placing all of your students and getting jobs.
I think one thing that you're already doing and that we can help is that students see what college is like. Come to college campuses. We have a Summer Leadership Institute for young girls for high school rising students, and we work with middle school girls, but get them on the campus so that they can see what college is like. I think when you make it real for students, they can aspire to it even more. And we do rely and work with the education system, and we educate teachers for the system so that to help prepare those students for the future so they're ready for college and have the skills that they need to succeed, and then we'll help them throughout to succeed.
When do you think people should start bringing students up to college? Earlier than what we've traditionally think of?
This tall. When they can see it, it makes a difference.
But you know, let me jump in here, Bert. Beth, doesn't that place undue pressure on a kid that can, you know, you're talking about colleges now. When kids go from middle school into high school, the pressure is already building. Doesn't that distract to some point, though, to look beyond that? And let me say it this way. UNC System President Tom Ross, when he was yet running the system, sat in your chair and he said, we're not sure that every child needs a 4-year degree. Maybe not. That's right. He said, not maybe. That's not appropriate for everyone. So how do you come down on that?
And different degrees are appropriate for different students. It's what works for them. But when you come to a college campus, what's important, I think, as a young person is you meet a student, you meet someone who is there, and that's who you identify with, and you want to be like them. And that's what we do with young girls of many ages. I say girls, we don't just educate young women, we educate working adults too, to help them go on in the workforce and aspire to higher and give them their higher education that they need to succeed. But for those young people to meet a college student, to be on a campus, can make a big difference in their lives.
Bernadette, thanks, please.
I just want to say I'm so appreciative to have the opportunity to mentor their initiative that they have. They have a mentoring program, and then we have their student that's also entering with our association. So I appreciate having the opportunity to do that and to applaud you for that initiative. My question is, what is Columbia College doing in order to make college more affordable so that students can get there? Because it also goes back to the question that we were talking about earlier about teacher salary. When teachers leave, go get a job, and then you don't have the adequate salary in order to pay back the loans. So what is Columbia College doing in order to make it more affordable for students to come?
We're very careful on the cost of tuition to keep it very affordable, to only look at raising it as the cost of CPI has gone up. But we also provide for every single student a scholarship. And that helps make it affordable. And we have one of the average student debt when they graduate from Columbia College is lower than the national average. Plus, by giving them the education, the mentors, the internships, everything else throughout their 4 years, and getting them ready for the workforce and into positions, that's where they get the return on their investment, and that's where what they've invested in pays off for them.
I had another question. Goes back to the shortage of teachers. What is Columbia College doing to promote careers in education?
Well, we're 162 years old, and teaching was one of our first degrees, and we're proud that that's still one of our largest areas at the college is teaching degree, and we are very committed to preparing teachers. We encourage young women to go into the field of education, and men too, working adults, to come back in the evenings and get their degree in education, and to give them the skills that they need to teach today's students, no matter what type of technology they may have, what kind of issues they have. And our students go out and work in those different types of classrooms as they are preparing to become teachers, so that they have experienced all the different types of education challenges that are out there. So we're proud of education as a major, and we're continuing that commitment.
Walker.
Well, I love hearing the conversation around getting people to go back to get their degree. In Guilford County, there are 60,000 individuals that have some part of a 4-year degree, but they haven't actually completed it. And when we look at our statistics for competing for jobs and recruiting jobs to come to Guilford County, we're losing out opportunities because our 4-year degree attainment is 38%. And as we compare that to the Raleigh metropolitan area or the Charlotte metropolitan area, they're north of 45%. we lost out on the opportunity to bring 5,000 call center jobs to Guilford County simply because our degree attainments on paper look like to this company we wouldn't have the qualified workforce them to have. And so we have an effort to try to get those 60,000 people back to school to get that degree so we can compete for jobs. And I think every country in America needs to begin to realize if we're not competing for jobs, it has huge devastating effects on our local economies. And if our workforce is not the most respected and well-trained workforce, we can't compete.
Is there a question? Do you have a question out of that?
Well, I want to continue this dialogue
Yes.
about how do you do this? How do you get people coming back? How do you inspire someone to go back to get their degree when perhaps the system hasn't really worked for them and it's not been a positive experience for them? How do you inspire them to do that?
What we found is adults, when they're ready to come back, they are very motivated to come back. But what it often takes is meeting them where they are. Now, we do have women and men who come to the college in the evening to complete their bachelor's degrees. We also partner with community colleges throughout right now South Carolina so that we take the education to them. They have an associate's degree, they need a bachelor's degree to get that job, to move up in their field. So we bring our professors to them so that in 2 years they can have a bachelor's degree in the community where they live and work. And then we started 100% online degrees for those first responders, those people who work 24/7 for us, and have degrees in criminal justice and emergency management. And a lot of our students were out the month of October helping all of us with the devastating flood. So you've got to meet the students where they are. Even our young women's students at the Women's College, Columbia College, they're in technology classes that are global. You know, they're in classrooms. They may be physically on our campus, but they're in a classroom globally so that they can learn the skills they need to succeed and compete in the global society.
Yeah.
Bernadette?
And I just wanted to also add that that was one of the proposals that our governor, Nikki Haley, recommended in order to get teachers into the rural areas, that she's willing to pay for individuals that want to go back and come into the education profession for their bachelor's degrees if they're willing to work in a rural school district for 8 years.
Does there, going back to that teacher pay for just a second, Beth, I mean, you're going to have a bit of a bully pulpit with the success of the placement of your students and the fact that you teach the teachers. Do you testify, have you testified to the State House about the importance of teacher pay, and how do you, this is not the right way to say it, but how do you sell legislators on the idea that this really is an economic development and a workforce development issue, that it's not just about raising teacher pay?
It is an economic development issue. I haven't testified, but the fact that three of our master's degrees right now, of our 3 master's degrees, 2 of them are focused on education, speaks to our commitment to education. And when teachers get that, our master's degree in divergent learning, to connect with those students who learn in different ways, they can get additional pay for doing that. So coming back to school, furthering their education, if that's paid for, it is paid for by the state, is a wonderful way to advance in their pay and their skills and reach more students.
I want to put you on the spot a little bit. We had the president, and I won't even say the school, and we have 2 minutes, so this is not going to be fair to you, but president of a junior Ivy League school in the Carolinas said to me on a side dialogue that he felt like we were talking about the cost of education. He said, I'm part of the problem. We didn't intentionally do it, but the cost of this particular school is pretty high and going higher. How do you not just slow the cost, but how do you make it affordable so it's not an elitism thing to have a 4-year degree and be able to stroke a check for a nice school, well, like Columbia College?
It's not an elitism thing. We are very affordable. We're designated a 2016 Best Value College. It's the quality of the academics and the affordability. So we're very conscious of that and keep it very affordable and make sure that then our students do get a return on their investment. So we're very focused on keeping it affordable, but looking at the investment they make will be an investment for their entire life.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for being on the program. By the way, as a side note, did you sustain much damage in the October flooding?
Just a few roofs, not too bad.
Not too bad?
Yes,
Yeah.
we're high and dry.
Yeah, no, I know a lot of people didn't, and it was pretty ugly. Thank you for being on the program. Nice to see you. Good luck.
Thank you, Chris.
Bernadette, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
The Education Association and what you're doing in South Carolina is no small task. So legislative session's running. Good luck this year.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
And Walker, good luck in the Community Foundation in Greensboro and Guilford County. I know there's a lot of school reform talk, and keep up the good work around education reform.
Right, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for watching us. If you have questions or comments, we encourage those. It's a long title in our internet word, but please go to it, carolinabusinessreview.org. Go to our website, make comments, and thank you for supporting this program. Until next week, I'm Chris William. Good night.
Major funding for Carolina Business Review was provided by the Duke Endowment, a private foundation enriching communities in the Carolinas through higher education, healthcare, rural churches, and children's services. Blue Cross and Blue Shield of North Carolina. Who's responsible for rising healthcare costs? Join us and many others in a candid discussion at letstalkcost.com. Grant Thornton. Operating in more than 100 countries, our tax, audit, and advisory professionals specialize in helping companies unlock their growth potential. Novant Health, bringing you world-class technology, clinicians, and care when and where you need it. Sunoco, a global manufacturer of consumer and industrial packaging products and provider of packaging services, with more than 300 operations in 35 countries. Blue Cross and Blue Shield of South Carolina, where healthcare is changing for the better. Find out how at ahealthysc.tv. And by viewers like you. Thank you. Promotional consideration provided by Business North Carolina Magazine. For more information, visit carolinabusinessreview.org.